Hello everyone, thank you for joining me. My name is Leo de Haan and I'm from the Netherlands. And thank you for joining me in this short course on livelihood research. Give me a minute to share my screen with you. I'm an emeritus professor of development studies. Before my retirement, I was rector of the Institute of Social Studies in The Hague in the Netherlands. The ISS is the oldest and leading development studies institute in the world. Before my appointment at ISS, I directed the African Study Center in Leiden, the largest center of its kind in Europe. I was trained as a human geographer, and throughout my academic career, I focused my research on livelihoods in Africa. This course is on the MA level, and it's open to all interested students, so not exclusive to my own university. The purpose of this course is to make you familiar with livelihood research and to inspire you to use it in your own research. So we will find out what livelihood research is, how it started, how it evolved, and what it is doing now. That will be a substantial part of the course. But there is also a second purpose, call it a reflective objective, without which the first purpose would only be superficial. Next to explaining what livelihood research is, we need to examine why it emerged and why it evolved the way it did. This objective is about contextualizing livelihood research against the backdrop of a critical assessment of development studies itself. This short course makes use of the so-called flipped classroom, which is a specific didactical approach. More about that in a few minutes. In this introductory lecture, I will explain further the content of the course work using the flipped classroom model, and the course materials. After this first introductory lecture, another 7 lectures will follow. In the second lecture, I will examine the basics of livelihood research. In the third lecture, I will contextualize the basics of livelihood research. I will discuss the rise of actor-oriented research in development studies as a reaction to the structure orientation of both modernization theory and dependency neo-Marxist theory. In addition, I will offer some initial reflections on issues like capital, material and immaterial needs, and access to assets and opportunities. In the fourth lecture, I will discuss a once very popular livelihood research method, the so-called Sustainable Livelihood Framework. By way of contextualizing this framework, I will dwell upon the actor-structure debate in development studies and the impact of the neoliberal ideology. In the fifth lecture, I will focus on advanced contemporary interpretations and practices of livelihood research. In this fifth lecture, I will start with the impact of power relation on livelihoods and then arrive at the core of modern livelihood research, that is, how to analyze social exclusion. In the sixth lecture, I will address the question whether social protection can counter social exclusion of the poor. To answer that question, we need again to contextualize. In this case, we need to contextualize social protection. Subsequently, I will derive 4 levels of social protection, tackling social exclusion and fostering livelihood enhancement. These levels are protection, prevention, promotion, and transformation. In the 7th lecture, I will assess social protection programs in India, Ethiopia, and Brazil on their ability to tackle social exclusion of the poor and to foster their livelihoods. In other words, to which extent do these programs achieve transformative social protection? The 8th lecture is about the relevance of livelihood research in the present day. In this final lecture, Contextualizing livelihood research against the backdrop of a critical assessment of development studies itself will dominate. Development studies is currently at an important crossroads. The outcome of the debate on decoloniality will decide how the future of development studies will look like, and the same goes for livelihood research. If livelihood research wants to remain relevant, it needs to decolonize. However, contrary to previous lectures, I won't be able to provide clear answers and solutions in this final lecture. I will discuss various views on decoloniality, but I do not intend to embark upon moving from coloniality to decoloniality in livelihood research on my own. To decolonize livelihood research is still a matter of searching conversations, and I propose to engage with you, dear viewers, in such a conversation. I will explain the ins and outs in the following. This short course on livelihood research uses the so-called flipped classroom model. This usually means that students go through lower levels of cognitive learning, that is remembering, understanding, during their preparations before class starts. This enables students to engage in higher levels of learning, so applying, analyzing, evaluating in class with fellow students and the lecturer. YouTube viewers can also take this short course through a flipped classroom. In practice, this means that for each lecture, your coursework consists of 5 successive parts. A video lecture with PowerPoint of around 15-20 minutes, which can be found on this YouTube channel. So you start your preparations by watching the recorded video of the lecture when it suits you. If you're interested, there is also mandatory literature to read. The mandatory literature clarifies issues already discussed in the lecture. To a large extent, you encounter again the issues of the lecture, but the mandatory literature also examines some issues more in depth. If you like, I can also provide you with optional literature. The optional literature presents additional explanations on relevant issues and offers practical, contemporary, and inspiring examples on how to organize research on particular livelihood issues. Of course, you are advised to read the optional literature attentively, but if you have little time, you should at least glance through it. Fourth, I can send you an assignment. The assignment enables you to apply the subject material discussed in the lecture and the mandatory literature. Finally, after having completed these 4 steps, I offer you the opportunity to participate in online classes, either individually or in small groups. Date and time of online classes will depend on your wishes and what your schedule allows. During the online class, 1 class per lecture, you will have the opportunity to raise questions for clarification, to formulate critique, and then to engage in applying the subject material by discussing the assignment. It's best to complete steps 1 to 4 before moving on to the next lecture, and it's mandatory for participation in the online class. The reason for that is simple. By completing these 4 steps first, you will have achieved already the lower levels of cognitive learning, remembering and understanding, and it means that the online class will become much more fruitful and challenging because we, that is you, together with your fellow participants and me as your lecturer, will be able to engage in higher levels of learning, such as applying, analyzing, and evaluating. So you start each lecture of this short course on livelihood research by viewing the video in YouTube. On your request per mail, I will make available various materials, such as a document explaining the didactical approach, the mandatory and optional literature, and the assignment. Just send an email to livelihoods@leodehaan.nl. Don't worry, all docs are open access. Date and time of the online class will depend on your wishes and what your schedule allows. So that's all for now. I'll see you again, at least I hope so, in the next lecture, and I hope to receive your email and to meet you in the online class if you like. Bye-bye.